Momentum. When great-uncle Peter came to live with our family in the house by the sea, I asked my mother why it was he never spoke. My mother explained that great-uncle Peter had always been silent, that when he was born he came out without even a scream. Great-uncle Peter could have only been young when the family, his mother and father and his sister Ranyevskaya, my great-grandmother, came over the sea from the old country. And in the smoky streets of London they learnt the tongue of their new home to speak in the world, and kept the language of the old country for home. But great-uncle Peter spoke not a word of either. And years pass, and then decades, and my grandmother was born, and my mother, and then me, and as far as anyone knew, great-uncle Peter said never a word. We knew that Peter was special, and we looked after him. Through generations of the family, he was passed from one relative to the next, always the women watching over this silent, detached man. But then grandmother died of old age, and it came my mother's turn, and there it skipped a generation. My mother was a working woman, and did not have the patience to nurse great-uncle Peter. At first she panicked when my father brought this strange savant down from London to our house by the sea. Panicked at the years of life she saw slipping through her fingers, sucked away by Peter's needs. My parents advertised for a nurse. They could afford this with the money from 2 jobs that had already bought the big house and the best schools for me and my 2 brothers. But the nurse was never needed. Once a day I would take great-uncle Peter for a walk along the Brighton seafront, and after only a few days we became a familiar sight on the promenade. The stooped yet still tall old man in the heavy black overcoat, the young girl with masses of unruly blonde hair in her own red windbreaker. The pebble was always with him. At dinner times he would pop it into his pocket. When he slept it lay on the side table beside him. At any other time it was in his hand, rotating in his long supple fingers. For months, I'm certain, I supposed he took it from the beach. One day I looked at it more closely. The form of the stone was depressed in 2 places where his thumb and forefinger rubbed against its milky surface. I remarked on this to my mother and she started with surprise. Yes, great-uncle Peter had had the stone ever since she could remember, maybe as far back as his being a boy, and always turning in his fingers until its shape became forever altered. On our last walk along the seafront, I took Peter down to the edge of the shore itself, a short walk from the promenade over the beach of grey pebbles that we rocked and rolled our way across in long, stumbling steps. From the shore we watched the sun drop towards the sea and the pink sky creep upwards from the flat horizon. The waves crashed in towards the beach, climbing higher up the narrow sand channel with each attempt and threatening to flood my expensive shoes.